It's the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. Green, gardening, and environment radio, flavored with a dash of humor. Welcome to intelligent, irreverent talk about plants and the planet they grow on. Your questions, comments, and participation are always welcome on Facebook and Instagram at The Mike Nowak Show and at Mike Now on Twitter.
Good planets are hard to find. Temperate zones and tropic climes. And true currents and thriving seas. Wind blowing through breathing trees. Strong ozone and safe sunshine. Well, good planets are hard to find. Good planets are in demand.
Brought to you by Bartlett Tree Experts. Every tree needs a champion. Go to bartlett.com.
Jet streams, perfect air.
And here they are, Peggy Malecki and Mike Nowak.
Well, good planets are in demand. Right.
I should have waited. I shouldn't have waited. I should have just hit the thing while you were looking down and trying to find something on the floor.
I was trying to fix the rug under my desk, which was keeping me from pushing my chair forward.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe you were looking for a cookie you dropped on the floor.
No.
No? Okay. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm looking at
welcome.
Yeah, and the Chicago.
Welcome.
Yeah, I know. It's just I don't have. Oh wait. And boy, it's what? Your dinger not working?
There we go. Okay. No, I wasn't able to get the volume up on my. There we are. Now you're coming in loud.
Oh, you don't need. I don't need a microphone most of the time. So, all right. Welcome, everybody, to the program. Boy, have we got a good show for you today. It's May Day. Happy May Day, everyone. Whoops, try not to make the earth shake here. Blah, 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 blah.
It's May Day. It's all sorts of things today.
Why? What else?
Skeet says Happy Arbor Day. That was the other
Happy
day.
Arbor Day. That was yesterday. We've got a tribute to Arbor Day in the show. So Skeet, hang on in the, is it the first break? I think it's the first break. Yeah. That we have a little bit of a tribute to Arbor Day, which was yesterday. So I hope you were all out hugging a tree. If you didn't hug a tree yesterday, please hug a tree today.
Every day.
Or plant one, which would be even better.
Or both.
If you could
or
do
both.
that. Yeah.
Can I do a product placement?
But don't, product placement. Here we go.
There we go. It's also May, which means the new Natural Awakenings Chicago is out. Woohoo!
All right. Well, give me a sense of what is in the new
It is
natural.
our women's wellness issue. So paying tribute to moms of all sorts, including bird moms and pet moms. And we have a lot of women's things, but we've got a fabulous article about growing herbs and veggies in container gardens. Lisa Hilgenberg from Chicago Botanic Garden, who's been on this very show, is interviewed in that article, as is Petra from Fruition Seeds and some other people.
Cool. And
so nachicago.com.
nachicago.com. And of course, you can pick it up at various places in the area. Where can folks find nachicago.com?
You can find it in the greater Chicago area, City of Chicago, Cook County, Lake County, McHenry, DuPage. A couple selections in Will County, like all of the nature centers for the Forest Preserve District have it. They don't have the new May one yet, but they will. They're on their way. Libraries, workout places, independent grocery stores, not big box grocery stores. We won't talk about that. We don't have enough time.
Well, we had a discussion the other day about some of the big stores and what they do and what they don't do for folks. So it's just something to keep in mind. And
so you said May 1st. Well, that's one of them. There's another May 1st kickoff today.
Of course, which is what we're going to be talking about on the show. Is that what you're talking
No,
about?
the sign over your shoulder.
Well, see, now I was going to. I'm desperately cheating here, tap dancing. No, let's talk about what we're going to do in the show, because then I can put that up. Because I am desperately right now trying to move a file so that I can pop that up, because I forgot that I wanted to have that file up here, and then I didn't have that file up here. So hang on 2 seconds while I find that file. But today,
So while he's looking for the file, I was going to say, everybody who's out there who's hitting like, please share the show.
yes,
Please tell all your friends right now. Come join, come listen for the next 2 hours. You're going to want to hear this.
yeah, and tell them how they can do that.
They can go to the Mike Nowak Show on YouTube. You can go to the Mike Nowak Show on Facebook and share it on your own feed right now. Tell people, come on, watch, start watching.
And-
you can go
and-
back later.
And
And
they can go
MikeNowak.net.
to .net, and of course the light goes off.
What
Thank
happened?
you. That just went off. It started doing that yesterday. It just kind of goes off, and I have no idea.
Well, that
You know-
happened to me yesterday, but that was the whole house and
All
the
right.
neighborhood. So,
But the other thing you were talking about that starts today is all right. The Chicago Excellence in Gardening Awards are back with live judges, not dead judges, but live judges in your gardens. We should send out dead judges.
no,
af-
judge bots.
After Judge Bots, yes. After a 2-year absence due to the pandemic, of course, we made up for it last year and the year before by having the 60-second garden video challenge. But it's not the same as people sending in their gardens and registering to have somebody come out in person and say, hey, this is a beautiful garden. And then we have an award ceremony at the end of the season, and we give away these fantastic signs that are made by the Forest Preserve District of Cook County, who's one of our partners in this endeavor. And among the partners are Illinois Extension and Chicago Community Gardeners Association, of course, Natural Awakenings Chicago, Forest Preserve District, Bold Bison Consulting is with us this year. Who else did we miss? Who am I miss?
At Aquarium.
Right, Shed Aquarium.
Yeah.
With us this year.
And I'm getting
Somebody on
I'm
hold has the Facebook up.
Aquarium.
all right. I'm getting feedback from somebody here. This is like a
One of our guests has the show on, but needs to hit mute.
yeah. So there we go. Oh, I didn't see that there. Somebody's audio popped up. That's okay. We're good. We're good to go. I think I've got it more or less under control here. So I wanted folks to know that they can go to ChicagoGardeningAwards.org. It's right there on the screen. I'm just leaving this up so everybody can see. No matter what kind of garden you have, you can enter it, but you have to live in the city of Chicago. We'd love to expand it, but this might kill us as it is. And we've reached 43 wards and 76 communities in the first 3 years that we did this before the pandemic. And now we want to hit all 50 wards this year in 2022. And we start accepting entries today. We actually have an entry, Peggy, already.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
people are on it. And you'll see this posted. I'm going to pop it up on my social media today after the show and on other social media. And you're going to start to see it all over the place. So if you got a garden you're proud of, you should enter.
I was going to say, we have an amazing committee working behind the scenes this year.
Great people.
We have pulled in wonderful, talented people helping this year. So looking forward to it.
So we're very excited. So I think we've left that up there long enough, and I just wanted to make sure that people saw that. Again, go to ChicagoGardeningAwards.org. You can enter today, even if you're not sure how good your garden's going to look in a month or two. You can anticipate.
I was going to say, if you'd like to be a judge, we are right now recruiting volunteer judges. So send a note to Mike at MikeNovak.net if you're interested in judging.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, my my light is it going to do that all day? Is the light just going to
The light
pop
goes
on?
on, the light goes
The
off.
light
The
goes
light goes
off.
on, the light goes off.
Okay, but today we're very happy to say we've got two really important subjects in addition to meteorologist Rick DiMaio. And if you're a Rick DiMaio fan, if you're a Ricky D fan, if you're a Dr. Rick fan, you better get your Rick today because he's not going to be with us for a month. And he's off doing, he's got to celebrate Mother's Day, and it takes all month for him. So he was just letting us know
He's
that
out and about this month. Yes,
that's right. So we'll see him again in June. So if you want your forecast, you better get it today.
He's getting a lot of sad tear emojis just now.
Oh, geez. And I forgot to say Happy May Day, which I just popped up there because I'm glad you reminded me because I wasn't even looking at our chat room.
And it was also Rick's birthday yesterday. So
yeah, so we want everybody to sucker punch him with birthday greetings. And we'll the best ones we'll read on the air and make him as uncomfortable as we possibly can. All right. So before we get to that, though, the first part of the show, we're talking compost, and we're talking International Compost Awareness Week. We'll get to that in a second. It's very important. If you don't use compost in your backyard, I want to say you're not a gardener. You're just not a gardener if you have no interest in compost. We will get to that in a second. But in the second, oh, Alexandra, is there another meteorologist in the meantime? Sure. I've got 6 or 7 in the stable there, just ready to go. They're just champing at the bit to get on my program. I have no idea. So at any rate, before we get, right after our compost presentation this morning, we're going to be talking about the avian flu that is going around the country that has killed already 27 million birds, mostly poultry. And what does this mean for your backyard? What does this mean for your feeders and your bird baths in your backyard?
Which feeders?
Right. And there's been a lot of information. Some of it's been confusing. So I picked up the phone and called John Bates at the Field Museum in the bird department there. He is going to be with us and try to explain, because even he says it's tricky, that there's no one answer.
And Illinois has different guidelines than other states.
Right.
Weird.
And like most science, there are no hard and fast answers. So we're going to examine it the best we can and try to give you best practices for your backyard and for Illinois and for the Midwest. John Bates from the Field Museum will be here at 10 o'clock, so you don't want to miss that. So meanwhile, though, as I mentioned, it is International Compost Awareness Week, which is why we have empty screens on our... Oh, there we go. For a second, I thought you guys had gone away. You just got bored, and you said, "I'm out of here." Let us bring in our panel here, and I'm just checking to make sure everybody's audio is on. Excellent, everybody's audio is on, and up in your upper right, because I need my cheaters here to make this work, is Merleanne Rampale. She's with the Solid Waste Agency of Lake County, also called SWALCO. In the lower left is James Kinn, who's the superintendent for the Vernon Hills Park District. And in the lower right is Vytas Pabedinskas. Did I nail it? Vytas? I said Vytas.
You're getting there. A few more shows, you'll get it right.
All right. That's all the time we have, folks. Good night, everybody. He's with Save Our Soil, LLC. He is a soil scientist. So welcome all of you to the program. I think we have to start, though, not with anybody, and I'm going to cheat here, my screen. Excuse me, because there we go. We're not going to start with any of you, but we're going to start with the good folks at the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition, because they are the people who helped make this happen. They wanted to promote International Compost Awareness Week, and
Amy Bartucci, especially. Shout
well,
out
Amy
to.
Bartucci and Kate Caldwell,
Mhm.
they each get a ding. Who have been behind the scenes making this happen, because they said it's really important that we talk about composting, and there's a lot going on this week, and you can go to their website and see all of the information that's happening. You know, we're the kickoff for this, which is, I'm so honored to be part of that for their International Compost Awareness Week program. So if you go to their website, which is linked and my blog, it's Illinois Composts, illinoiscomposts.org. And you go right to the site and you can find out all about the activities that are going on, and just a wealth of information happening this week. And part of what's going on here is, and I will get to some of those activities in just a second, but let's go to Merleanne, because you work with SWALCO, and you got a grant recently to promote composting in Lake County. And by the way, Peggy lives in Lake County.
Yeah.
And we're going to show some photos in a second that look a lot like Peggy's yard, which is, and I don't mean that in a good way. No, just some of the soil, that some of the stuff I've seen in your yard. You're going, huh? But tell us about that grant that you received,
Sure.
and how does that bring in some of the people on the program today?
Sure. And I just want to reiterate, too, for everybody to check out the Illinois Food Scrap Coalitions. There's like a ton of activities and programs and speakers and panels going on today.
And like I said, I'm going to get to that in a second.
Yeah, great. So the grant it's a USDA grant. It's a 2-year grant, and we started this back in fall of 2020. So we're in our second year. We're going to be wrapping up the grant this fall. However, there's a lot of good work that's going to continue, that kind of sprang from this grant, that's going to continue even after, we've completed our reports and turned all of those in. And there's really kind of multiple objectives. We're going to be talking mainly about one of them today, but there are multiple objectives to this grant. First one is a food waste diversion. And it's a really huge issue across the country today, increasing the use, or increasing food waste diversion, and efforts going on all around. And we're focusing here in this region of Illinois by coming up with programs and marketing tools to work with our municipalities and our members. And SWALCO has about 40 plus municipalities that are members of the agency that we work with closely. So we have a great collaborative group of communities here that are working on this. And currently we have about 28 communities out of our 40 plus that already have programs in place. Some of them have had them for a number of years. So I would say across the middle of the country, it's pretty progressive to have these curbside composting programs at home. So we're trying to provide education and tools to help our municipalities and other groups promote backyard composting as well as curbside composting. And I know I have a number of friends and acquaintances. Not only do they do backyard composting, but they participate in their community's curbside composting program, because you can also throw additional items that might not be great for the backyard compost pile into your curbside program.
And I have to jump in just for a second here and say that if you live in Chicago, you're out of luck. Curbside composting is a pipe dream, and they can barely. And again, I'm sorry
Pick up the blue bins.
yeah, they can barely pick up yard waste without making you jump through hoops of fire, and that's a shame because it's the third largest city in the country is that behind the times. But a lot of our suburban areas do it very, very well, including many in Lake County. So
yeah, and it's really some people may be familiar with some of the stats that are out there, but it's a little daunting. 40% of all the food produced in the United States today for consumption is wasted. 40%, and of that, 25% comes from our own homes. So if we're either backyard composting or curbside composting, we're doing one of the best things we can do.
Yeah, well, there's a production line in my house, which is, every time a food scrap is available, it goes into a bin and then it goes out to the compost pile. And sometimes I've got just huge containers lined up on the back porch ready to go in the compost pile when I get the initiative to do it. But they're always going to end up there. And folks can do, if you have a yard, you can compost.
It's easy. It's doable.
Yeah, that's when we talked to Amy and Kate on the show back in February. We did a whole segment on backyard composting and how important that is. But as you mentioned, it's also the community efforts to compost. So you got this grant, and it's not as if these municipalities don't understand the importance. Why was it so important to have this grant to bring them into the program?
So to be able to shed more light on what's happening across the country, to provide resources and education to our members, to our community, to our municipalities. But some of the other pieces to this grant too are, so once we're generating all of this material too, we also have to build up a really robust, vibrant circular economy for this. So once we're generating, then where does all of this material go? So we're also working with community gardens and farmers and farmlands, small and large, across the Lake County region. We're working with our municipal members and encouraging them to consider utilizing compost on their, public government sites, their public works, their landscaping. So that's another major piece is once we start getting all of this material and encouraging and having people participating in either backyard composting, curbside composting, or both, then we have to have and develop that circular economy for the rest of the material. And then another important piece, which is why we have Vytas. We're so fortunate to have Vytas and James here today. When we started this grant, we started looking to a number of people across the community that we could collaborate with. And we have collaborators and partners like ISTC, the Illinois Sustainable Technology Center, University of Illinois Extension. We have Brightbee, civic agents helping with some of the marketing and some of the other pieces. And a whole crew of farms and community gardens. Vytas, of course, was one of the first people we thought of. We've worked with him for a number of years and for the soil studies and that piece. And then James and I have known each other for close to a couple decades, a decade and a half. And SWALCO and the Vernon Hills Park District have had like an amazing relationship over the years, a real close partnership. And we still, to this day, we have annual events that we do together, sometimes with the village of Vernon Hills, and other initiatives and things we've partnered on over the years. And James and I have had a number of conversations about the community garden there. We're also establishing a network of community gardeners. We want to bring them all together, share resources, have education demo days. but James and I were talking about some of the issues and some of the challenges, particularly at Vernon Hills Park District. So when we started this grant, I immediately thought we've got to get Vernon Hills Park District involved in this project too. And
Well, let's talk to James a little bit. And one thing before we do that, I would just want to reiterate something you said that's really important, and that is the idea that 40% of our food is wasted in the United States. That's insane. Which is why,
And 25% out of households.
out of our own homes. Yep.
yeah, and which is why the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition is so important, and their efforts to draw in all kinds of partners to address food waste and to promote composting, because the two go hand in hand. They just do.
And one last kind of important point too is that when you think about that food waste, you can also think about all the resources that went into making that food. Those are all getting wasted too, the water, the energy. And also that beautiful, we're also losing when we waste it, that beautiful amendment that could be produced, this wonderful thing we call compost.
All right, and we're going to get to that. Vytas is going to have a lot about the soil guy. I always love having soil guys and gals on the show to talk about the importance of compost. But let's go to James Kim, Superintendent at the Vernon Hills Park District. Why is it you wanted to get involved in this program?
Well, Mike, it really started with a connection with Merleanne back in 2019 when this Go Green Vernon Hills Lincolnshire group approached us about having a compost bin at our community garden, the one that you're going to be showing a little later. And at the time, I kind of was a little hesitant because it's in the middle of nowhere, a lot of animals, but I agreed to it. And in the same breath, we were struggling with the community garden. And so I took it upon myself to take 2 of the plots, and I added mushroom compost and wood chip compost that we have been storing since emerald ash borer and Dutch elm disease. And Merleanne and I just got talking, and she found out about the USDA grants. I was on board right from the get-go because the soil in that community garden really needed something more, and we really did not want to use synthetic fertilizers. So that was the beginning of, for us at least, for this composting.
You talk about the soil. Vytas sent me some photos. Is this an accurate representation of what you were dealing with in your soil?
Yes, that is very accurate. A lot of clay. The site previous to being a garden was just a parcel of land next to a railroad track with a lot of invasive species, including buckthorn, which is notorious for stripping the land of all nutrients. And that's what you see is left after we cut everything down.
Well, and here's an aerial view. As you mentioned, you can see the railroad track there, and you can see that the green area, you're telling me most of that was buckthorn.
Yeah, a lot of buckthorn, honeysuckle, and the little trees that you see were all being choked out by grapevines. So they were soon to be dead anyways.
Right. And so what you did to start is you had, it looks to me like you sort of wiped it clean so that you could have a new start. Is that what happened here?
Yes, in 2014, we worked with the Village of Vernon Hills. This was their parcel, and we wanted to build our new maintenance facility for our Parks Department. And in the same project to the right of that screen, you'll see where the community garden is going to pop up on the next screen. And
all right, well, let's show that. Okay, and where's, yes, the community, look at where the cars are parked, and then you can see the new building there. And just to the right of where the cars are is the community garden, and I have actually a slightly better look at it here. Voila. And we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves here, but I wanted you to see that this is ultimately what happened. So, but let's go back to as you were trying to work with it. You mentioned before or in some of the stuff that I've seen, that you tried to garden the area, but gardeners were facing all kinds of difficulties and their plants were not doing well.
No, exactly right. So everyone was very hopeful. They always are for the past 6 years, between May, June, and then about right after July 4th, plants, they stunted. A lot of them would produce vegetables and fruit, but they'd be half the size, and then they start to wither, and gardeners would give up. It wasn't lack of water. We do have a water source there, and people were out there daily, but you get a bad storm and the clay holds water, and so the plants kind of drown. Or on the opposite, they water mornings, and then by 2 o'clock, the soil is completely dried out, and it looks like the picture you had shown before.
Well, I have more pictures like that to show. We need to take a short break, but we're going to continue this story about what happened in Vernon Hills with the community garden there. We're talking to Merleanne Rampale, James Kim, Vytas Pabedinskas. See, now I can't do it. Pabedinskas, there we go. Pabedinskas. He said, just look at it. It's easy. Yeah, easy for you. Say it 3 times real fast. Not you, but I can do. Yeah, just okay. It's the
Don't stop.
Yes, and we're talking about International Compost Awareness Week. It starts today. This is a kickoff for that. So tell your friends, if they're not watching right now, they should grab us on the stream and join the conversation. You can go to Facebook, you can go to YouTube, you can go to Twitter, and at MikeNowak.net, MikeNowak. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
I was pretty well considered an outlier in nuts. And today, the nursery with the kids and everybody involved is still considered groundbreaking in the sense that we do it just different. Over in the Possibility Place in 1978. By 1982, we were strictly into natives and have been ever since.
Possibility Place Nursery grows more trees, shrubs, and perennials than I can count. Several hundred species, from large shade trees to very small perennial plants.
There is a native plant for every place in your yard. From trees to shrubs to flowers and grasses. They flower just as pretty. They flower on time. They bring in butterflies. They make a yard more dynamic. And every time you do a planting is an opportunity to add a native or to integrate a native into your landscape and make it richer.
From spring seed and soil treatments to summer foliar feeding to fall stubble digesters, Blazing Star provides microbial tools from tiny biologicals for natural and organic farmers. They have solutions for home gardeners too. And Blazing Star also offers agroecological education and consulting, especially for permaculture work in zones 4 and 5. Learn more about these great folks and great techniques at blazing-star.com.
Here at Bartlett Tree Experts, we spend a lot of time talking about the importance of trees. Here are some fun facts for you to take to your next Arbor Day celebration.
Pine trees grow on 6 of 7 continents, with Antarctica being the only one left out.
A big tree with lots of large leaves can release as much as 300 to 400 gallons of moisture into the air each day.
The roots of a tree grow underground, helping it to remain stable, providing water and important nutrients. Tree roots can grow 2 to 3 times the width of a canopy.
Hello from Oakland Park in South Florida. Water and nutrients travel up the tree trunk, throughout the branches, all the way out to the leaves.
And welcome back to the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. Everybody settle in, turn on your cameras, here we go. And happy Arbor Day yesterday. Our thanks to our friends at Bartlett Tree Experts. And we appreciate their support. And like I said earlier, go plant a tree. Go hug one. Don't hug the one you just planted because you'll probably break it. But hug a big one.
And by the way, welcome to Possibility Place. As a new sponsor.
Yes, as a new sponsor on the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki, and that's a great place to go too and order your native plants. Speaking of trees, you can get great native trees there, trees, shrubs, perennials, and more. So go to possibilityplace.com. All right, one of the things I wanted to pop up, because we're talking about that today, International Compost Awareness Week, May 1 to 7, and you might see this when you are going to the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition site, and of course they have, as I said, they've got a lot going on here, and some of the stuff that's happening this week, as I said, we're kicking it off today, but today and May 8th from 1 to 4 p.m. and Wednesday from 5 to 7 p.m. There's a compost gift back. Pay $5 per 5 gallons for finished compost from Collective Resource Compost, and they used to be a sponsor on our show, so they have supported us, and I love Collective Resource Compost. On Monday, tomorrow, it's it's another part of the kickoff. What's cooking with IFC, USCC, and ICAW? Well, that's all those acronyms are about compost. It's acronym city here, isn't it? And there's a keynote tomorrow, the 2nd, from 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. The speaker, Finian Makepeace from Kiss the Ground. And again, you can find all of this information and register and be part of it by going to Illinois Composts with an S on the end, .org. Tuesday, May 3rd, there's an Illinois Farmer Expert Panel. You hear farmers describe their farms, crop operation, and compost use. And then finally on Thursday, May 5th, on-farm tours, learn the benefits of regenerative agriculture and composting from Tulip Tree Gardens and Christensen Farms. And these are recordings, so you're not going to actually be going in person. All of this, of course, is online. And if you want to participate, go to IllinoisComposts.org. Also go to my website, go to MikeNowak.net. In the blog post for today's show, I have the links to all of this, and you can certainly be part of the celebration this week. As we mentioned before, we're talking to, I'm not going to do the names because I'll just screw them up again, so you can see them on the screen.
Merleanne, James, and Vytas.
There we go. That makes it a lot easier.
Thanks.
We were talking to James about Vernon Hills. You know, here's an interesting thing. If you live in northeastern Illinois, you know what clay is like. I talk at garden clubs all the time, and the soil is clayey, it's alkaline. One of the things I tell folks, because it's so alkaline, I say there's a secret to growing blueberries, because blueberries like acidic soil. And the secret to growing blueberries in northern Illinois is move to Michigan.
Go to the farmer's market, yes.
Or go to the farmer's market, because or put them in a container, but even in a container, it's not going to be as satisfactory for a lot of people as putting them on the land. But that's it. But those are the things we deal with. And sometimes folks in the city like me have it better. My soil when I came here, it wasn't great, but it wasn't crazy clay, hard clay. It was stuff that was probably, I'm a couple of miles from the lake, but it was not horrible. And maybe it's over the years it had been amended enough times, but I've added compost over the years, and now it's fabulous. I wouldn't say I could just stick my hand in and plant things, but I don't have to dig really at all. I don't turn the soil. I just add more compost each year. And James, that's kind of what you're trying to get to in Vernon Hills, isn't it?
Yeah, that is exactly correct. So we added 2 to 3 inches back in fall of 2020, and then again this past fall in 21 to really get that soil profile up and out of the clay. And just so that the plants have something to grow in. And there's a good shot. It's about 40, we put about 40 yards in each time.
Yeah, well, and let me, now this is for a community garden. And here's something that when I talk to garden clubs about compost, this is what I'm thinking of. When I say you need to put compost in your yard, this is what I'm thinking of. What they're thinking of can be quite different. What I think they're often thinking of is, what are you getting in a bag at the Home Depot? Okay. And
coming out of the bin in the yard.
Yeah. And Vytas, I'm going to skip to you very quick and we'll get back to James. What's the difference between what you're getting in that big truck and in a bag at a box store?
So bag material, it's been on the shelf for a bit. So whatever you're getting in bulk is fairly fresh material. So it's a stable product, really reliable. But the bag stuff, you're paying for the packaging. It's going to be a lot more expensive. You can buy a yard bulk material between $35 and $45 a cubic yard. And you go into a box store and you're going to pay for maybe a cubic foot and a half, $10, $15, $20 maybe. So just in that sense, you're getting a lot less with a product that's been sitting around for a while that might not have the same punch that you would buying it in bulk. And it's a lot more work, really, in my opinion, just to have a whole bunch of bags filled up in your back of your car, have it delivered, have it dropped, spend a half a day spreading it out. Because bag-wise, I don't think you'll ever purchase enough to satisfy your soil's needs.
That's
so
that's
so
a
how
really
much
good.
is enough?
So
Sorry.
in James's case, we went pretty crazy for small plots, for community gardens. A lot of these community gardens, they're being built on suspect ground, which means no topsoil. It's just clay. And so you have to rebuild a lot that was taken away when the land was developed, right? So that space was invasive species. They cut down all the trees. They had to grade it to make it, and for engineering purposes, when they put the building in, it's at the edge of a parking lot. So it's pretty compromised soil. So you go aggressive 2 to 3 inches a time, and that helps counteract all the negatives that you're getting with that very clay soil. On a farm, you wouldn't go that aggressive. On a big farm that's growing corn or soybean, a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch is ample. But for these community gardens that really need to build soil, going aggressive with that 2 to 3 inches at a time is really necessary. And I think what a lot of folks do is they think about the gardening and the plants first before they think about the soil. And that's an important step. My recommendation for folks who want to start a community garden someplace where it's like James's soil, be patient. Give it a couple of years to build up. The first couple of years, your plants are not going to be as happy as you think they should be because your soil's trying to catch up to a condition that it's going to give you really great growth.
All right. So, one other quick question. What would you say about the biology in a truckload of compost versus that bagged stuff?
You're going to have a lot more biology. So compost is a living thing. There's a process, the whole breakdown. You got a ramping up where things warm up, active breaking down, then it cools off, but there's always life going on. And the further out you go from the composting process, the less you have in terms of microbiology. So if it's in a bag,
meaning it's been bagged, it's sealed. They do have a certain amount of moisture in there. There are standards for that. But one of the things that I've learned over the years is that there are no national standards for bagging compost. Are there? Am I wrong?
That I need to catch up with. So we have the one entity that oversees compost quality is the U.S. Composting Council. And so they have STA, which is seal testing approval, I believe. Benjamin Crumstock has been on your show.
It could be. I just went off my rocker there, but it's
no, but you're right. You're right. Because what frustrates me is when they make sales in terms of weight instead of volume, because compost has such a great ability to hold water. So if you're charging by the pound, you might get a lot less compost because it's just a lot more water. So you should purchase by volume. And so that's kind of goes to what you're saying about the standards on what material you're buying when it's bagged.
Okay. So let's
and where it came from.
Right. And speaking of that, we have a question. Can you deliver to the south suburbs? Well, you have to find the folks in the south suburbs. And what we need to do is, can I ask if any of you know of sources in the south suburbs who can purchase that kind of compost? And if you don't, we'll track it down. Anyway, so let's look back at this photo that I showed, James. This is, I assume, one of the plots in Vernon Hills as you were adding compost?
Yes, this is one of our plots. Each of the 36 gardeners did something different, and we allowed it. You can see in the top left corner they did rows, while this individual just put in 3 inches over the entire plot.
Right. Yeah, because at some point you gotta create a path. It's sort of a real thing, and this is what are we looking at here? You've got a raised bed there, I see. So in this case,
got a moisture meter and
and they built a raised bed. Either one.
So that's a raised bed, and that's a moisture meter. And Vytas was taking soil samples just to see, not just chemical wise, but see where the clay was laying beneath the soil and how deep it was.
Yeah,
it's actually a compaction meter. So what we're looking at, this is James's. James took it upon himself to have his own plot. So we had a control and treatment. So we split that plot in half, and we applied compost on one half, and we kept it with the native soil on the other half. And one thing about clay soils, when it dries out, it's like cement. And I was just using the compaction meter just to verify my suspicions that we're basically planting in cement when it dries out, and make a comparison later once we've added the compost, how much easier it is to work with the soil. And that's James shared with me how early on in the community garden's life that these community gardeners were really complaining about the workability of the soil. That it was just too hard to work with. It was unmanageable. And then you see in the background, someone just gave up and just said, you know what, I'm just doing raised beds because it's just too hard for me to work in the soil itself.
And that's a really good point, because some people think are going to go in the direction of a raised bed, and others are going to say, you know what, I can amend this soil. I can make it better. What are the pros and cons of that?
I think going into soil, you have a lot more temperature regulation. You have a lot better moisture management. Raised beds do tend to dry out faster. They heat up as well, which might be good in the springtime when you want to get planting sooner. The soil in the raised bed will heat up faster. But there's also that transition from whatever you have in the raised bed to whatever contact it has underneath. So if you don't mix up that top part with the native soil, you're going to have this texture difference that could cause some water issues, some ponding. It's kind of like having soaking at the bottom of a potted plant. That's sort of that stage where the water just kind of builds up and it doesn't leak out. So you can have the same thing with a raised bed.
We've got a couple of comments here real quick. Snappy J Dog says Forest Park Community Garden, which is south suburbs, buys compost from JKS Venture in Melrose Park. So that's up there. But Benjamin Crumstock is watching, and he says, Vytas, you're describing the difference between top dressing, which is the 1/4 to 1/2 inch applied to the surface of the plot, versus more of an engineered soil approach. And engineered soils start by getting a lot of compost into the soil and aggressive soil rebuilding, then planting into that engineered soil. In the case that James is describing, and many others, you start with soil engineering in years 1 to 3, and then move to an annual top dressing maintenance.
Something else I want to point out, Sarah Batka from Illinois Extension is writing that the Illinois Extension of Cook County has 2 more community compost collection events scheduled for July 16th in Park Forest and July 23rd in Homewood. These and the links are there in our chat room. I don't know exactly which format this is in, whether it's on Facebook or Twitter or MikeNowak.net. And I've been corrected. Arbor Day was Friday, not yesterday. And you're right, it was Friday.
And Forest Park is west suburbs and not south suburbs. I've been corrected. Park Forest is south suburbs. Forest Park is west suburbs. Why they did that, why they chose those 2 names, no one will ever know. And there was something else. Benjamin just posted the U.S. Composting Council seal of testing assurance. Testing assurance program. Every participating product has a testing data sheet, so you really know the product profile, chemical and biological.
And this just in. Thursday will include a live Q&A with Jesse Smedberg from Tulip Tree Gardens. So that's part of the International Compost Awareness Week. All right, so we're getting all kinds of great comments here. I want to go back to this because this is the finished product, James. And as you can see, there's a combination. There are some who've decided they're going to do the raised beds. And Vytas just pointed out the good and the bad of doing that, or at least the difficulties and pros and cons. But as you can see, there's a mixture here. Everybody gets to do a little bit on their own, right, James?
Yeah, we kind of allow people some autonomy on their garden plots. I mean, they don't own it; they're renting from us. But whatever makes them successful, it keeps them happy, and this is what we're allowing them to do. You could see some people put structures up for vine plants. Some people just put up rows and put mulch in between rows to keep weeds down. In the middle of the screen, someone put fabric down so the weeds stay down, and they put plants inside the little rows of composted soil. So yeah, whatever makes them successful.
And there's a huge difference between that and that. All right.
Yes, huge difference.
And Peggy, this is what I was talking about when I said that some of this, I've seen some of the soil in your, because you have clay soil, right?
Mm-hmm. I have some in the area that floods all the time, is exceedingly compacted, that I just haven't amended, versus the stuff that has been amended with compost and leaf litter and everything else regularly.
And that's part of the problem. It's the soil around you, and as you mentioned, flooding. That's what happens, and it just sits there on top of the clay, and you're trying desperately not to drown your plants. It's this, Vytas, and it's a weird thing that I think some gardeners don't understand, is that clay soil actually holds a lot of nutrients. There's a lot of nutrients in clay soil. The problem is it holds on to too much. You can't get stuff to drain in clay soil.
The weeds love it.
Yeah, exactly. It's not plant available. So if the typical soil class chart, you'll have clay soils all the way on the right side, and it'll show moisture content, right? And there'll still be a lot of water. It's just the plants can't fight against the clay because it holds on to it so tenaciously. So you're going to have plants wilting much faster. And when you have that situation, when you're seeing active cracking, that means that the clay is sort of pulling against itself. And if you have a root that all of a sudden has these cracks open up, then you have exposed roots, and the plant will dry out even faster, right? So there's stress on the root for trying to pull the water out of the clay. And then when those cracks open up, you have this, all of a sudden, it's going to dry out really quick because the root is no longer covered.
Yeah, and something else to keep in mind, and you sent me this. This is the coolest thing, Vytas, and I'm going to show this to Rick today. Rick DiMaio, our meteorologist. This is a comparison slider here, and another thing that folks have to deal with in the Midwest, and anywhere in the country, is what kind of rain are you getting? Now, what we're seeing here is our current conditions. I'm going to slide this back, and it actually works on here, which is awesome. I'm going to slide this back to June of last year. No, that didn't do it. Wait, I'm sorry. I need to adjust that. Sorry, I didn't set. I have to set that up. All right, here we go. Let's go here. And I think, you know what? I set it up last night, and it reverted. And that's part of the issue. And I don't think that's last year. It's a lot farther than you think. There's 2020. There's 21. Oh, and I can hardly read that stuff. So much for my little. You know what? It's a shame because I'll do it in preview, and then we'll see what we can do here and show that. But let's make the point that you're dealing with drought and excessive rain, and these are all conditions that encourage you to have compost in your soil, which is going to mitigate these factors. Isn't that right?
Yeah, it buffers a whole bunch of different things. So when you have clay soils, it allows for better percolation and infiltration of water. If you have sandy soils, it holds more moisture. And so when we started the project last year, the picture I sent you is like this little tiny band of like severe drought. It's like a red zone for Lake County, and it lined up with all of our sites for the project. And so with compost in the soil, with increasing your organic matter, you're going to have more moisture available for a longer period. So those drought effects, especially on clayey soils, will be mitigated. And if you have sandy soils closer to Lake Michigan, you're still going to be able to hold more moisture if you have longer time between rains.
Yeah. So it's all good if you're putting compost down. Merleanne, let's get back to you before we wrap up here. So this is a success story here in Vernon Hills. What are you seeing with some of the other municipalities? Are they having effective use of compost? You started this in 2020, right?
Yeah. And primarily the soil studies were done on farms and community gardens. We had a number of them that came together to do this. But one of the other things too, just for people to think about too, what's really kind of cool, if they are participating in the curbside programs, that material is coming back to our local community here. The stuff that's going from our homes is coming back in a wonderful new form that can really benefit. And even people who don't have gardens, who don't garden, just applying this to your lawn can be of great benefit. So yeah, and we are working with municipalities not only to show the how to participate. And I would encourage anyone out there, if your community does not have a program, a lot of times they might be ride-alongs with landscape waste, what we call a ride-along program. You contact your city board, contact your council, contact your village administration or city administration, and tell them you're really interested in this and you want to see programs happen there in your community. All the other many benefits too of utilizing this. From my perspective, I grew up organic gardening and composting with my dad from a young age. So I'd love to see more younger gardeners getting out there and getting into composting. But just for me personally too, one of the other benefits, not having either reduction of chemicals on some of these farmlands and community gardens, but possibly even the elimination of chemicals.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the municipalities, we here in Lake County, and this is pretty much happening across the country, our Lake County Grays Lake Countryside landfill has about 4 to 5 years of life left. We already know about the negative impacts of landfills anyway, but it has about 4 to 5 years. They've done all the expansions and developments, so it's there's just so many wins for all of us if we're either participating in curbside composting, backyard composting, utilizing composting, purchasing it.
Yeah.
So
and 2 points that you made. One is excellent that most people don't think about, which is you can put compost on your lawn. All right. And it adds tilth and it adds biology to your lawn. One of the things we didn't even mention the word soil food web, Vytas, which is such an important part of what's going on in compost. It's all the microorganisms and macroorganisms that exist in compost, which give it its aroma, which is a good aroma. And if you're doing it right, it's a wonderful earthy smell. And you just want to pick up that fistful of compost.
It's the biology.
It's the biology, stupid, is what we always say on the program. It's the biology, stupid. But there's so much good going on. So that's a good point you brought, Merleanne. You can put sifted compost on your lawn, and it's going to do the same thing, as much better than pounding it with fertilizer with that 28% by volume in a bag of weed and feed, which you should just don't ever buy. It's way too much nitrogen. It's just not going to be. Plants can't possibly absorb it. But the other point was, go to your civic leaders and say, hey, I want food scrap pickup. I want yard waste pickup. I want composting in our community. And I want the folks to be able to access it. And if you're in Chicago, next year, aldermanic and mayoral races say, unless we get yard waste pickup and food scrap pickup, I might consider not voting for you. That might not be a good thing. You have the power, folks. You absolutely do. One more thing before we go. Liz Kunkel wrote to acknowledge Go Green Vernon Hills. So we should give a shout out to Go Green Vernon Hills. And she says... backyard composting uses as few resources as possible to reuse organic waste, but not everything can be composted easily in a yard, and not everyone has a yard. So the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition has resources related to non-backyard composting options like container swap programs, curbside pickup programs, drop-off programs, community gardens, and more. We mentioned, and now I'm going to blank on it. Our former sponsor, Collective Resource. There we go.
Resource.
They're one of ways that you can do it. There are ways you can do community composting with food scraps. You should look into those. And one way to start is going to the Illinois Compost Illinois Food Scrap. Hello. Try it again. Hello. I'm so excited. I'm just getting all excited here. And I got the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition. And all the links are at my blog and, of course, IllinoisComposts.org. Thank you all for being on the show today. Very good conversation. I hope folks take advantage of International Food Illinois Compost Awareness Week. There's too many acronyms. I can't get them all out.
IllinoisCompost.org /ICAW.
I'm not even, SWALCO and everything else, but thank you guys so much. You guys, and there goes my light. See, they're shutting me down here because I have no idea what I'm doing.
Thank you all for putting up with us this morning.
Yeah, we appreciate it. I'll get better next week. So when we bring you back next week, no, we're not going to do that. All right. You guys have a great Sunday, okay?
Thank you for having us.
All right.
Thank you.
And coming up next is what to do with your bird feeders and your bird baths in your yard. It's the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. We'll be right back.
The best thing about my job is the excitement of waking up every morning just wondering what the challenges are going to be that day.
So how do you like my office?
We lead with safety. It's the first thing that I think about when I wake up. It's the last thing I think about when I go to bed.
We've got a number of employees in the office, myself included, who've been around for 10, 15 plus years. So people enjoy working for the company. Staff retention's a thing that we're very, very keen on.
It's no secret that the world of arboriculture is a male-dominated industry, but there is a fearless group of women out there that are determined to change that, and I'm really proud to be one of those women.
At my office, I feel like you could take just about anyone, put a crew together, and send them out to a job and have it be successful. And that has to do with trusting the people you work with, feeling safe around them, and knowing their strengths and weaknesses.
One of the proudest moments working with Bartlett for me was being the first to do training in a Spanish class.
Ya rompe el street porch, el aire acondicionado.
Bartlett is all about promoting from within. We really want to focus on our people and make sure that they're trained, make sure that they understand their role, and you slowly grow through your experience, and then you improve and move on to different roles within the company.
There's always new positions, even at a base level, myself included. I started off as a climber and have worked my way through to being local manager in the office.
Bartlett has been really great about recognizing any kind of roadblocks for different genders, different races, people of different nationalities, and just kind of taking a bulldozer to all of those roadblocks.
Every tree needs a champion.
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 Welcome to the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. Green, gardening, and environment radio with just a soupçon of humor. Or is that a dash? Brought to you by Bartlett Tree Experts. Every tree needs a champion. Go to bartlett.com. Here they are again, Peggy Malecki and Mike Nowak.
All I need is good food to eat and make me healthy, wealthy, wide awake. Lettuce, tomatoes, rutabaga. What about those sweet potatoes? All I need is good food to eat. All I need is good food to eat. All I need is good tools to make me music, porches, lawn serene. Give me all that I can take. Get me stuff.
And welcome back to the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki, and I'm going to try to get my mouth together. Man, I can't handle the acronyms. I just can't handle any of it. Hey, let's say it's just alphabet soup. Absolutely. Speaking of things that we need to talk about, it's John Bates is here with us, and it's easy because Field Museum isn't using any acronyms here. They're just saying it's a Field Museum Birds. John, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Well, and it was kind of on short notice because a week ago, I didn't know I was going to do this. I didn't know we were going to talk about this, but things have changed, continue to change because there's been a lot of notices going out recently. If you're a birder, if you, pardon?
And confusing notices.
Yeah, there's been a little bit of confusion. You might have seen some things on television, although I had somebody write to me and say, gosh, I'm glad you're covering this because there hasn't been a lot of it out there. If you're us in our line of work and looking at all there's a lot of stuff. I mean, I have a bunch of links, a bunch of links on my blog post about what's going on here. But maybe in the mainstream, not so much because there's, we have to talk about other things that are not about animal and plant diseases. And this is a serious one, avian flu, which has hit the United States. It was in Europe in the fall and in the winter, and it's made its way over here. And John, well, maybe you can give us kind of an overview of what we're dealing with.
Well, we're dealing with a flu that is highly pathogenic for certain groups of birds and particularly causes major problems for poultry and raised farm birds. It spreads via wild birds, and so one of the recommendations that's come out from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources recently is that people should take down their bird feeders, and that's the topic of conversation for us today.
Yeah. What kind of birds are affected? You said poultry, but raptors are affected. Some shorebirds, from what I understand, waterfowl. Those seem to be the groups that are affected by this. Correct?
That is correct, and those are the primary groups, and that's one of the reasons why there's this conundrum a little bit with respect to what you should do specifically with your bird feeders. So if you're not living near poultry and you're not feeding ducks and geese, there's a reasonable chance based on recommendations. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say you're not likely to have waterfowl in your yard.
Right, and so it's also not clear that not clear. The data so far are suggesting that songbirds are actually minimally affected by this virus.
Yeah, that and Cornell Lab, the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, writes about this. They say there is currently very low risk of an outbreak among wild songbirds and no official recommendation to take down feeders unless you also keep domestic poultry. And they say they do recommend that you clean bird feeders and bird baths regularly as a way to keep many kinds of diseases at bay. But that would be recommendation in general, wouldn't it?
Sure, absolutely. And the Illinois DNR is recognizing that we're entering the month of May, which is the primary season for spring migration through the Chicago region, which is just a spectacular event. And they're trying to get a jump on the possibility that there could be issues related to spreading bird flu. And so I think it's a recommendation that if people are definitely concerned about it, they should take down their bird feeders. But I also, the guidelines from the federal level have shown that current recommendations from that level are that this has not been a big problem for songbirds yet.
And what about, I was going to say, what about birds like orioles and hummingbirds and non-songbirds?
Well, so orioles are songbirds, but hummingbirds aren't. And so, birds that are, I use the term songbirds a little loosely there, but basically we're talking about the non-waterfowl that have largely been affected so far. Although, as Mike points out, it has shown up in birds of prey. And so a lot of those birds of prey will feed on water birds, and so that may be where they're contracting it. And this illustrates that there's a lot of science that needs to be done to truly understand exactly what's going on with all these viruses. And I think, obviously we've seen this with respect to COVID-19 too.
Well, speaking of the science, how is this spread? From what I understand, feces is part of this. What other ways can birds spread it to each other?
Well, it's probably mostly through those kinds of through waste and things like that the birds are shedding virus, but they can pass it from bird to bird probably via respiratory and secretions from the bills and too. And so again, it's definitely highly contagious. It's been shown to be that way, and so it's of concern particularly for poultry.
Right. All right. So that gets us to a little bit of the confusion that we've been dealing with here, because again, given that there are a lot of people like me. Okay, I'm in the middle of the city of Chicago in Logan Square. I don't see waterfowl here. I don't have poultry. As far as I know, there's nobody in the neighborhood that has poultry. I can't hear it, so I assume there isn't. There's probably not, as you point out, a lot of risk for those birds as long as I keep my feeders clean. However, the Illinois Department of Natural Resources thinks it's a good idea for you to bring in your bird baths and your bird feeders. The problem is there's just different kinds of bird feeders, and one of the things that has frustrated me and Peggy in reading these stories is that they don't enumerate them. So we've got the seed feeders where the birds perch on them. We have suet feeders. We have hummingbird feeders. We have the oriole feeders, which are the fruit. We have thistle feeders. How do you separate all of that and make a determination?
Well, I think you're pointing out one of the challenges with making assessments like this. So all those feeders we put out because we want to attract different types of birds. It's probably true that hummingbird feeders, for instance, may be highly unlikely to spread much in the way of disease because of the nature of the way they're structured and how few birds actually visit them other than hummingbirds. We know that diseases like conjunctivitis that are contracted through in finches primarily show up in thistle feeders and in seed feeders, and so those need to be kept clean. And that's the recommendation here. But as you said earlier, this has always been a recommendation because we know that these kinds of feeders can pass on some pathogens to birds.
I have a question that just came in. What if you have wood ducks nesting nearby?
So this is a great question, and what I would say is the wood ducks are probably not defecating around your feeders, and yet at the same time, it's conceivable that these birds, which fly around, and this is one of the birds that come to your feeder, this is one of the challenges for us, are interacting with birds around water in situations where they could pick up the virus. And so far, the indications are that this particular H5N1 virus is not particularly problematic for songbirds. But again, these are the kinds of things that we can only begin to address through additional monitoring over time.
By the way, go ahead, Peggy.
Go ahead. I was going to say, so some degree of avian flu happens every year, typically. What's the cycle? I mean, is this something that by June, July, it's kind of gone away, or is it showing to be a little different?
Well, so with this flu, one of the recommendation or what the thoughts on it is that as it warms up, it will become less of a problem. Again, I always like to point out to people that I'm an evolutionary biologist, and we are just now getting to the techniques to where we can apply them broadly to begin to understand how these diseases get spread and what happens with respect to mutations and all of this. And so you're right. These flus have been around for probably millions of years, actually. And so, again, I mean, we have over the last 20 years, we've developed the capabilities to rapidly genotype these things and begin to monitor this. And so there's actually a lot we have to learn about all of this to truly understand how it works. But we know that these viruses mutate, and some of the versions are going to be more pathogenic than others. And the indications are that this particular one is definitely a problem for water birds and gets into the farm raised birds and can cause big problems.
Well, and as we know, we have already culled or seen the deaths of 27 million birds in the United States. In the 2014-2015 bird flu.
Farm birds, right?
Well, it's all birds right now. And most of them are farm birds, are poultry, but there have been deaths that have not been the result of us killing birds. In the 2014-2015 pandemic outbreak, there were more than 50 million birds killed, and some observers think now that this is going to surpass that 50 million birds, which means we've only gone about halfway through this, and we're about to see more. Does that concern you, John?
Well, sure. I mean, that's a big issue. Although I would say almost all those are in the industry, the poultry industry, and that's a group that monitors these things, and they're trying to prevent spread to protect the food supply. And so they're looking very closely at what's going on in those situations. I was going to point out that in wild populations, one of the things that's critical is we don't know until we know what's gone on. So for instance, one of the events that got people's attention was a large number of double-crested cormorants being found dead up in Baker Lake and region. And one of the things that I still find interesting about that report is they think that could be bird flu, but I haven't heard a definitive indication that it actually was. And one of the things that is challenging with this in the wild bird populations is you have to get samples into the appropriate labs to do the testing to indicate what's going on.
And part of the problem we're dealing with here is that the water birds, it's in an article in Wired that I have linked to my blog post, says that chiefly ducks carry it without illness. So they're just carrying it and passing it along, but it makes the poultry sick, and of course it makes raptors sick. I saw a report a week ago, about eagles that have died from this, and they're overcome rather quickly. It happens rather fast, doesn't it?
Well, yes, when you're susceptible, very much so. And we saw this with West Nile virus, and crows were much more susceptible than a lot of other. Canada geese, for instance, weren't susceptible as far as anyone knows to West Nile. And so that doesn't mean that they weren't transmitting it. So you're right. One of the challenges with birds is they get around very well. And so if you're a carrier and you're a migratory bird, it's going to spread the virus potentially long distance easily.
Which brings us to the migratory routes. Some folks are concerned that the Atlantic flyway is going to be a spreader. And I would think that the Midwest flyway, as birds come up along the Great Lakes as well. And you mentioned to me earlier before the show today that, well, yeah, that's what flyways are all about.
That's absolutely true for the wild birds. And it's been interesting with this one that they're really emphasizing the wild birds. One thing I would point out there that's always struck me is I'm entirely sure we have a particularly solid understanding of how much poultry gets moved around on a regular basis either. And so, for instance, with the last bird flu, they were talking about it spreading to Africa. And the first place it showed up was in Nigeria. And that's not really on the logical flyways for moving around. And eventually the story was that they traced this back to poultry movement. And so I think humans move birds around too. And so in addition to flyways, which can get bird flu around very quickly, there's also the possibility of it moving around with contaminated poultry.
Speaking of humans, we just had a report 2 days ago that a human in Colorado was infected by this bird flu. We had a human infected in the UK in December or early January. Early January it was discovered. So far, both cases are mild, but and I guess what it points out is that this is not readily transferred to humans. But is that still a concern?
So I'm obviously not an expert in this field, but at the same time, I would say absolutely. And yet it's true that the people that have contracted it, from the perspective of what they've been doing, have been associated with the poultry industry. And so they're having significant contact. And so what that means for the public in general is you're it seems highly unlikely that you would contract bird flu by coming out into the public, in your yard and interacting with the birds around you. And I think those are important things to remember with respect to these kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. So if you do come in contact with a bird or a group of birds that are in distress or have died, what is the course of action?
Well, I think one of the really great things in that Illinois DNR post about their recommendations was that if they say if you come in, find 5 birds that are dead, contact one of your local health officials, and they have a link to the Illinois DNR on that post on who to contact and how to find people. And you can absolutely contact agencies in your local regions, and they will come out and take the birds and get them in for testing. And this is critical. I mean, again, people are often afraid with that once they find something like that, that's a bad thing, and it could be or it could not be. That's why we need to do testing.
All right, let's recap for folks who are watching and try to give them a sense of what their next steps are. I would say right now the Illinois Department of Natural Resources is saying take down your feeders and your bird bath, but you get to exercise some judgment in that. Is that a fair assessment, John?
I would say so. I mean, it's a recommendation for them, and they're recommending it through May 31st, which is, again, getting us through the primary period of migration. But I think if you look at the federal guidelines, I think there's reason to think that songbirds are not going to be affected by H5N1 based on the data we have so far.
Okay, so which means, folks, it's up to you to be smart. You have to figure out.
Keep them clean. If you leave them up, keep them clean.
Are you near waterfowl? Are you near poultry? These are all important clues as to how to behave, what next step you should take. And some of you will err on the side of caution. You will say, no, I need to take this down. This is important. Others are going to monitor. And that's the important thing. Anything having to do with science and a changing world is monitor the situation and see what's going on. All right. That said, I'm going to sucker punch you here, John, and pop something up that I actually got from Peggy, who showed this to me. What are we looking at here, John?
That's me on an absolutely unbelievable trip I took to the South Polar region with 5 female penguin experts, and we are in the Antarctic Peninsula, and we were sampling penguins across the South Polar regions. We went to the Antarctic Peninsula, we went to South Georgia, and we went to the Falkland Islands over a month in January.
Okay, I want to be a scientist at the Field Museum, so I get to do cool stuff like this. All right, and
I'd be on a sailboat down there with a cup of coffee on the deck. I see that
it's
coffee.
The best. It was an unbelievable trip, and people keep saying, was it a trip of a lifetime? And I say yes, but if I could do it again, I would.
And where are those mountains? What are we looking at here?
So this is South Georgia, which is this island.
Wow.
That's fairly, quite well isolated. The distances in the trip were a triangle about the size of Chicago to New Orleans to Denver and back. And South Georgia is an island with a long history of whaling and sealing, but at the same time, that's all stopped, and it's become an incredible destination with just some of the most spectacular wildlife vistas I've ever seen.
And speaking of wildlife, this is an amazing photograph. Look at the number. It looks like it's Photoshopped, John. Those can't be all penguins, can they?
So that's even a small part of the colony. These are king penguins on South Georgia at St. Andrews Beach. And this is what nature can look like in situations where in various parts of the world. It was absolutely stunning. And I'm an ornithologist. I go to different places and study birds all the time. I'd never seen anything like this.
I can't imagine how loud it was there of the birds.
It's fascinating, and the vocalizations are different. And you can, in the background there, you can see some brown birds, and juvenile king penguins are these fluffy brown things that take so long to mature that they have to survive an austral winter before they go into the water. And they have this incredible whistle that it's almost like they're just like trying to call their parents. But can you imagine what it's like for an adult to actually find its offspring in this? It's incredible, and yet they do it.
Wow!
And here we go. Here's another. I love this photograph. That's quite a toupee that this bird has.
Yep, that's got a great name. That's a Macaroni Penguin, and it's part of a genus of penguins that really likes to nest on sort of up rocky slopes and things. And so these adults are going back and forth to feed their chicks, climbing up these incredibly steep slopes.
And one more before we let you go. And all I can think of for this dude is that it needs a pair of shades, and it would just complete the picture.
That's a rockhopper penguin up from the Falkland Islands. And they're just, again, it's another one of these species that this colony that was on a top of a cliff face that was probably 100, 200 feet high. And again, the adults are working their way up these ravines to feed their chicks. And it's just absolutely stunning.
So what did you learn from that? I mean, a lot, but what blew you away about what you learned from?
I keep saying it's one of the most remote places of the world, and yet at the same time, humans are beginning to have an influence on it. So right after we got back, there was an article that said that soot from ships is potentially taking an inch or so off the snowpack every year. And again, I think it highlights that humans affect every part of the planet. And at the same time, we need to be able to study these animals and what's going on with them because we're their stewards. I mean, it's an important thing.
Just remarkable. And I'm glad, Peggy, thank you for finding that, because
those are on the Facebook page at Field Museum Birds.
It's just, I'm glad we could do something fun opposed to, and by the way, if you had stuck around a little longer, you could have seen the partial eclipse this morning, or was it yesterday? Whenever it was. Yesterday. That was the only place in the world you could see the partial eclipse.
If somebody would send me back there to study a partial eclipse, I'd probably go.
That's not your call. That's not your field of study, dude. Okay.
It must affect the birds somehow, though. So it could be.
Good question. I think we can work on that.
Send it back. He wants to go. He's ready. He's got the jacket. He's got the cup of coffee ready to go. By the way, John is curator. I'm doing this backward. I should have done this first. John is curator of birds and section head of life sciences in the Gawney. Oh wait, hold on. I have to turn off Rick's mic. I thought I had. Let's do that because otherwise.
Got Jax in the background there.
Yeah, we got Jax. He's going to be barking, and so let's not do that. There we go. John is curator of birds and section head of life sciences in the Nagani Integrative Research Center at the Field Museum. His specialties include biogeography, environmental conservation, evolutionary biology, and systems. How do you pronounce that? Phylogeography. Well, it doesn't say phylogeny. No.
Phylogeny.
What? Phylogeny. Really? Is that how it's pronounced? Okay. Whatever. And
I don't know. It's off the website.
She just put it off the website, and however it's pronounced, you're a fancy guy, and we really appreciate having you here with us. Thank you so much for explaining. We've already had some folks write to us and appreciate having a little more clarity about what to do with the feeders in their backyards.
I'm really glad you're covering this topic.
Well, thank you. It's important. And you don't see it on every show, and certainly not at this, not at the depth that we're willing to do. John Bakes, thank you so.
I was going to say, if you're willing, we'd love to have you back talking more about birds on an upcoming show.
Absolutely,
anytime.
Okay, great. Maybe we'll get you and Stotts, Mr. Stotts, to come back and do dueling scientists here on the show. I think that would be pretty cool. Oh, before we go. I'm so glad I remembered this. Monty and Rose. I've had people say, you got to find out how this is going to affect Monty and Rose. And you're sucking in your breath there, John, because you don't know, do you?
Piping plovers in general.
We know that lifespans of birds are such that it's possible, I hate to say it, that Rose won't return. I hope she does. But one of the things that happens is bird biology is built in for that. So we see this Mary Hennon, who's our assistant collection manager and bans all the peregrine falcons in the Chicago region, has seen this over the years, it's not uncommon when a mate disappears for the other mate to find another bird. And
does the mate know when the other bird has died, or do they just wait a period and move on?
So that's an awesome question, because with Monty and Rose, it's actually really fascinating. They know so much about those birds that they know that Monty and Rose winter in different parts of the country.
Right.
And so they don't stay together. So no, so in this particular case with the piping plovers, we know they have no idea what's gone on over the non-breeding season for their mate. And so that's a hard thing. But what it highlights is that, and the biggest challenge will be if Rose doesn't show up, whether or not another female piping plover will actually pass through the region such that Monty can get another mate. But again, that's why you want them breeding and producing young to try to build up the population of piping plovers so that they can actually find each other in these situations.
Well, and the other question is, could the piping plovers be affected by the avian flu?
Oh boy, they could be affected by that avian flu for sure. I mean, I think that I'd like to think they're a little buffered based on their breeding distributions and sort of plovers. Particularly piping plovers tend to be fairly solitary in terms of they're not going around in big flocks, and so that's probably a good thing. It's a tough life for these birds, and we're migrating back and forth too. There are plenty of predators that could attack them at some point too, and so. I mean, the breeding biology of all these birds is one of the things that we're interested in trying to understand, all these different factors that can eventually, affect these populations.
And Bruce just gave us a crying emoji on here. He's sad about what might have happened to Rose, but we don't know yet.
So we don't know yet, and she was late last year. And so again, what I think is fascinating about this is I tend to think about things from a population perspective, but that doesn't mean the individual perspectives aren't entirely fascinating. So, I hope Rose is someplace in south of here right now, just waiting for the weather to turn, and is going to show up at Montrose sometime soon.
Or she's just
waiting for the right breeze to come up.
She's just messing with Monty right now. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, John, thank you so much. We're late for meteorologist Rick DiMaio. It's the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. Stick around. He'll be right here.
From spring seed and soil treatments to summer foliar feeding to fall stubble digesters, Blazing Star provides microbial tools from tiny biologicals for natural and organic farmers. They have solutions for home gardeners too. And Blazing Star offers agroecological education and consulting, especially for permaculture work in zones 4 and 5. Learn more about these great folks at blazing-star.com.
Starting seeds with fluorescence? Let's talk. You've used fluorescent bulbs for as long as you can remember to start your seeds, and they work. We get it. Or you look at alternative lights to start seeds, and the fluorescents are noticeably less expensive. We get that too. But I'm here to tell you, you and your plants deserve better. It's time to take seed starting to another level. Here is why a good quality LED grow light does so much better than those fluorescent bulbs. Your seedlings will get a better start in life with stronger stems and no legginess. Not only will they have stronger stems, they will be stronger overall in order to fight off disease. You can get them in the ground faster because the cycle time for growth can be shortened. You will save money overall because you can grow better quality plants in a shorter amount of time with much less energy than you use with fluorescence.
It's time to play that game that you already play every day. Try to look pretty without poisoning yourself. Meet Jackie. She's a working mom who feels her ordinary looks need all the help they can get.
Hi, Bob.
Okay, Jackie, let's see if you can find a cosmetic product that doesn't contain toxins and cancer-causing chemicals.
Geez, can you give me a hint?
Sorry, cosmetic companies don't always have to tell you if they contain toxins.
What?
That's just the way the game works here. And it's how the game is played for you ladies playing along at home. Oh, Jackie, you lose. You poisoned yourself. That lipstick contains lead. In fact, all these cosmetics contain cancer-causing chemicals.
You mean I didn't even have a chance?
Sorry, sister. That's just the way you play. Try to look pretty without poisoning yourself.
I thought that's something that you might appreciate there, Peggy, because you cover
Yep,
some.
it's a huge problem still. I mean,
It's
there's a
still-
lot of companies now. You can find a lot of more non-toxic. They make a lot of gluten-free products now too for people with gluten sensitivities.
Wow. Okay. And you can that PSA was made a while ago, and like you
Yeah.
said, it's still an issue. And
Still major cosmetic companies, the big box. Although some of those brands, not to get off topic, some of those brands have even moved into big box, but typically most of the mass marketed cosmetics
all right.
issues.
Meteorologist Rick DiMaio, good morning. And this is for the folks watching, and they're already crying in their beers. I don't know why they're drinking beer at 10:30 on Sunday, but Rick this is his report for the month. And then
Just got a yay, Dr. Rick from Amos Barrow.
There you go. You get yourself a ding.
And happy birthday, by the way, sir.
And right, and folks, you're welcome to wish Mr. DiMaio a happy birthday. And I noticed you sent it off to your students too. You want them to bring you gifts? Is that what you're hoping?
No. It's the website from Purdue University where you can actually look up the weather on your birthday, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I've actually got it on. You'll be really excited, now that you're not going to be with us for a while. That I finally figured out how. Okay, now I'm going to have to expand this. Hold on a second. Here we go. I have figured out how to take this thing and scroll it. After all these weeks, I finally got it to work. But let's go to the bottom, because this is what you're talking about. The weather on the day Rick DiMaio was born.
Yep.
And
What a shock. It was raining.
It was raining. Well, there you go. That says something, doesn't it?
The rain every day on my birthday.
Yeah. So, happy birthday to you. And go.
And a lot of other historical things have happened on April 30th. Hitler committed suicide. That's a good one, right?
Ooh.
Yep.
That's a big one.
Yep. Saigon.
Although,
fell.
wait a second. I read the other day, there are people who believe that he faked it. So there we go.
Him and Elvis.
Him and Elvis. Oh.
They faked their deaths. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, guys, you can see I faked my death today. I'm still alive.
There is.
And, fall of Saigon, and also the day of the LA riots. How about that?
Boy, you got a lot of interesting things going on the 30th of April.
Yep, and they seem to move every April 30th as well. So a lot of interesting things, but we got a lot of other things to talk about. So let's get to it.
Yeah, in fact, one of the things that we have to talk about is let's start this, because this is.
Yeah, and that's not the obscure that went through. Let's make sure we tell people real quickly that's not what happened around here yesterday in Illinois. That's over Andover, Kansas.
Okay. I apologize. When I put that up, for some reason it popped everybody's mic off. So let me. I got to get Rick back up here too. Hang on. There he is. Okay, we're back.
Yeah.
Rick.
So my question, Rick, because I noticed this. Something popped into my head when I was looking at these images online yesterday. It's this Wizard of Oz style, Hollywood style tornado. Is most of the ones we see aren't this way. What's different that this has this super tight?
Well, I think first off, this is your classic dry line tornado. A dry line tornado is one where you have literally a flow of moisture coming in from the south with very high dew points, and then a flow of moisture coming in from the west with very dry dew points. So what ends up happening is the thunderstorms can develop basically from about 4,000 to 5,000 feet up, all the way up to the top of the troposphere. But at the same time, the western edge of the thunderstorm is typically very clear because of the dry air that's moving in from the west. As the low-level rotation begins to pull that dry air around, it clears out the lower levels, so you usually have really, really good visibility. So you'll end up with this stovepipe type looking tornado. Most tornadoes, from a standpoint of their low-level spin, probably always look this way. However, the ones that are further south and southeast always get a lot more rain wrapped around. So instead of having that stovepipe look, the low-level flow will fill up with a lot of rain. When these tornadoes become a little bit more longer lasting, this was obviously a fairly young tornado because it just started. When they become longer lasting, you fill them up with a lot of dirt and debris. So even though the funnel cloud remains somewhat tight, the actual wind around it will fill up with a lot of debris and a lot of dirt. So this is actually how most tornadoes should look. They start out white, they end up going from gray to brown to black, and they also fill up with a lot of debris. So once this starts to really chew up the ground, it'll looks like it'll get wider. But this was a classic Kansas dry line tornado. The ones that we had around here yesterday, weak, extremely weak, EF0 for about maybe 2 minutes. There was like a low-end EF1 up around Boone County. But the setup yesterday was much, much weaker from a standpoint of dynamics and moisture instability, not moisture as far as how much was in the atmosphere. And that's one of the reasons why they didn't last long. But
and, you know, if I just want to make a point before I get back to you, one of the reasons I think this tornado is so dramatic is you can see the clear sky under the cloud layer there, and you don't often see that behind the tornado. As you mentioned, there's usually rain and darkness, but that's just amazing to have that blue sky there, and then there's a tornado popping out of the cloud like that. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, and this was Andover, Kansas, and it's also important to note out that Andover was also the site of a violent EF4 back on April 26, 1991, which tore up, much of the same area that this tornado inflicted damage on. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the houses that were in the path of this tornado weren't even around back in 1991. So yeah, it's been a very active tornado season, as evident of the fact that we've been very cloudy and rainy here. And if it wasn't for the fact that the atmosphere was a little bit cooler yesterday, we probably would have had something similar to this, probably in maybe Western Illinois and Eastern Iowa, probably not here in the Chicagoland area. So yeah, this produced quite a bit of damage. As of today, no fatalities, which is pretty impressive. But again, when you have tornadoes like this in an area where people know about it, and they know what to do, they know where to go, the outlook was there, the watches were there, the warnings were there, everything worked out. And every once in a while it will work out. You can see people obviously have a lot of cleanup to do, a lot of repairs to do, maybe some complete rebuilding. But the bottom line is the watches and the warnings and the news coverage, the reports of these tornadoes happening really worked out well to save people's lives.
And as you mentioned here in Chicago, then, the next day, and you show this, and we'll show in some of the charts here, we had a setup for tornadoes, but they were fairly weak. Kathleen and I were in the house and watching live coverage on TV, and then they spotted the one near Oak Brook. And she said, so should we head to the basement? I said, well, hang on here. Let me, I was looking at it, and they were talking about how weak the rotation was. And having listened to you for many years, I said, I don't think we have an issue here. And of course we did not.
Yeah. And it was picked up really well because it literally went just north and east of the site of the National Weather Service radar down in Romeoville. Initially, it almost went right overhead. And sometimes you can't see it when it gets that close to the radar and it's right overhead. But just when it passed to the north and east, you could definitely see it. But it was really small, moving really fast, and clearly wasn't going to do any damage. But you remember what the Rogers Park tornado did a couple of years ago. All it takes is, one tornado to move through highly populated urban area, and you can have a lot of tree damage. So you're not going to have houses destroyed, but you'll have trees that'll probably come down. And this time of the year, because there's not a lot of leaves on the trees yet, even though they're beginning to bud out, it probably wouldn't have been the same type of scenario that we had back in August of 2019.
All right.
Wow.
Yeah. Things happen fast.
Yeah.
And I'm going to the stuff you sent just a little while ago, so I'm going to try to get some of that up because that's the latest.
Yeah, the rainfall. Yeah, we got some pretty decent rainfall, 1.5 to 2 inches. We had 2 lines go through. The first one produced probably about an inch, maybe 1.5 inches. The second one came through a little bit quicker. And what was neat about the second event that came through between about 7:30 and about 8 o'clock, that moved through fairly rapidly, but the sun was so low in the sky, you got some really nice views of the Mamadas clouds on the backside of the thunderstorms, and also a lot of rainbows as well. So
and
it was
the
really
lightning over the lake was spectacular as it headed east.
Yeah, it was one of those things where, because we were beginning to clear out a little bit, you had quite the show from a standpoint of Mamadas clouds, the rainbow, and also the lightning as well. So every once in a while, you can get the setup just right where you see all 3 of those, and that was it was nice that it came through on a Saturday, but at the so that most people were kind of aware of it. But this is, I think, since March 1st, out of 9 Saturdays, we've had only 2 good days where we've had weather that cooperated with people doing things outside. I mean, even though we had a bit of a break yesterday, it was still, you had to worry about the rain. You had the rain in the morning, you had the rain in the afternoon, the rain in the evening. And now we're back to early April weather, which is, again, just miserable. I mean, low 50s, cloudy, windy, and it's like, ugh. And it ain't going to get any better anytime soon.
Well, and here's some of the stuff that you were talking about here.
Yeah, so EF0, basically like maybe 65-mile-an-hour winds. Oak Brook, Timberlane, a little bit of damage up around Capron, Colfax, down around central Illinois, and then some straight line wind damage. But yeah, that one little spot right by Oak Brook is where you had that damage. And notice the photograph was from Patrick Sketch, if you know they're in the bottom.
Let's give Pat.
Oh.
He sent me something this morning. Yeah,
That's at the golf course.
Yeah, that's right behind his house. Yeah. So I know where Pat lives there. So obviously they got some cleanup to do with that. And hopefully these were diseased trees. So usually it's the diseased trees that'll probably go down more quicker than the healthy trees. But nonetheless, I mean, even Friday afternoon, I was calling this a very, very weak setup. It didn't have any of the ingredients that the event had over Kansas and Nebraska. I was actually kind of surprised they put out a tornado watch for us. But at the same time, being that it's a Saturday afternoon, it gets people a little bit more aware of what the weather could do. But this didn't really have the markings of potential tornadic weather. The shear wasn't right. The low-level instability wasn't right, but sometimes they'll put out a tornado watch just so that it helps out the National Weather Service in case they have to put out a couple of tornado warnings. Even the amount of wind that came through was barely severe limits. There was very little hail with this, some pea-size hail, but nonetheless, it's a Saturday. It's the first one during the course of the year, and that'll obviously get people to be more aware. What's really neat, this is kind of fun to watch. Or not fun to watch, fun to look at. This is the first line of thunderstorms that came through. This was about 5:30.
Yeah.
And you can see the way the thunderstorms were developing, and all the green planes are the ones trying to get out of O'Hare. The blues are the ones that are trying to get to O'Hare, and you can see they're holding up over Sheboygan. They're holding over Indianapolis, and they're actually holding as well northwest of Dubuque. And there's actually another spot, you can't see it, where they're holding south of Indianapolis. I have not gone and looked back and seen how many flight delays and cancellations there were. I know there were probably well over 500 flight delays, probably maybe 100 or so cancellations. But the thunderstorms, when they come in from the west like that, are always going to have a big impact on both O'Hare and Midland.
And now this is as it stormed through.
Yeah, that was the second line that moved through. So you can see that the planes were beginning to take off again, and that line, once it came through, it enabled them to get back to operation. So it's funny, the weather could have ended here at 7 o'clock. If you go to O'Hare at like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, on a night like this, it's packed.
Yeah.
Packed with people trying to get their luggage, trying to get out, trying to get to. So yeah, that airport doesn't slow down in severe weather. They're pretty busy, but it'll be much quieter today in the next couple of days.
Yeah, I imagine. Well, then let's. I don't know. You sent a lot of graphics there.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
don't go through all that stuff. We can just go to the regional stuff in the forecast. You don't want to bore people with a severe weather lesson.
Well, it was. I mean, some of the stuff. All right, I can pop this on. You can see this is just one of the things from the other day that is so interesting.
Yeah.
And what was cool is seeing that low pressure center. And I was looking at the radar yesterday, and you could just see the arms of it like a spiral galaxy running up into Chicago, which was pretty cool.
Yeah. The satellite image below that will show that as well. So this has been the case ever since about the second week of March. A lot of these mid-latitude cyclones that continue to come through. So that first spiral band was actually the leading edge of the warm moist air that literally came all the way up from the Gulf of Mexico. And what meteorologists always look for from a standpoint of tornadoes is where that southeasterly wind is intersecting where the southerly wind is. And that will allow you to have low-level rotation. So sometimes you can get thunderstorms develop in the warm sector to the south of us. And as it moves north and east, and it intersects with that southeast flow, it'll take the bottom part of the thunderstorm that's already rotating and spin it a little bit. So sometimes you'll get a wall cloud, sometimes you'll get a couple little funnel clouds, sometimes whatever rotation is actually within the main core of the thunderstorm starts to get pulled down to the ground. So when you see a tornado like you saw on the video in Andover, Kansas, that's only about like maybe 10% of the thunderstorm. The rest of the thunderstorm is rotating all the way up to 30,000 feet. It's just that little bit of rotation down there at the surface that's actually producing damage. And oftentimes in Chicago, when you get that southeasterly wind, the lake will actually bend that wind even a little bit more to the east. So up around Highland Park, you may have an east wind. Right along the lakefront, it'll be an east-southeast wind. And down around Calumet City, it'll be a south-southeast wind. But down around Joliet, it'll be like a south-southwest wind. So that little bit of curvature, due to the fact that the lake coolness kind of bends the wind a little bit, will sometimes enable some of these thunderstorms to produce just a little bit of rotation. There's a few places in the country that are like that. Denver is one. LA, believe it or not, is one, where you got the LA basin kind of turns the winds around as well. And Chicago is, believe it or not, another area like that. So when they initially put out the tornado watch, they didn't include Cook County and Lake County. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is obviously someone who's probably not understanding of our mesoscale weather. They probably said, well, the winds off the lake will probably, stabilize the atmosphere. But actually the winds off the lake increase the low-level vorticity. So you may actually not get any tornadoes until you get to Cook County or Lake County. And
Wow.
sure enough, they extend the watch into that particular area. But that's okay. That's okay. That's why.
So is that why, like, quite often in the storms, including yesterday, they split? And this portion of Lake County, I got less than an inch of rain. When all around me, north and south, was heavy storms, and around here was rain.
Yeah, I think part of that is, especially when you go like northeastern Lake County, Peg, when you get a little bit further northeast, you're getting almost too much cool air coming in off the lake. And by that time, the storms have probably kind of weakened just a little bit. So I think from a mesoscale perspective, that probably does work out that way. But the fact that these split, the fact that you had two lines wasn't really because of that. It was because the initial line actually formed off that last graphic that Mike just showed. That was the initial low-level jet. And then the second line actually formed along the cold front. So the one that formed along the cold front didn't have that low-level southeast wind. If you notice last night, after the thunderstorms came through, it was actually warmer in parts of the city.
It got warmer, yes.
Yeah, the temperature jumped to like 10 degrees because what happened is the thunderstorms came through and the outflow actually pushed the lake breeze back out into the lake. And it was amazing last night. I know. It was amazing last night. Rebecca and I were downtown and we left, there was about 9:45. It was about 67 degrees. When we got up to Evanston, it was down to 57. So the lake breeze actually came back in because the downburst from the thunderstorms was no longer there to push it out. So in reality, that little bit of a southeast wind is only about maybe 1,000 to 1,500 feet. You get above the surface and the wind is coming out of the southwest. So that little bit of a southeast wind, unfortunately, which is where us humans live, can make the world of difference between, a chilly east wind and a day where people in like southwest suburbs go, I don't know, it was 70 degrees with a 65 dew point where I live.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of little mesoscale things that happen this time of the year, and especially now with the lake being as cool as it is, you're going to see those impacts lasting even longer. So this is today's forecast, mostly cloudy and cooler. Yet another mid-latitude cyclone came through. Temperatures yesterday on the backside of this were only in the 40s. And now that with all this rain across that area of North Dakota and the Minnesota border, the Red River is flooding like crazy. And it was actually about a foot below record flood stage up around the Grand Forks area a couple of days ago. So because the system is now occluding, the chances of it becoming a severe weather producer goes down really, really fast. So
Rick, explain to people, what does it mean when a system occludes?
So what happens is the upper levels are generally, say if the upper levels are here, the front side of a storm system is where most of the energy is being lifted up off the ground. So the upper level low would be over central Kansas. The surface low would be over eastern Kansas, all right? So that allows the wind to kind of get pulled up into the front of the storm and kind of tilt back to the west a little bit. So it kind of keeps the front of the system, developing and pulling moisture and warmth into the whole system. Once that surface low begins to weaken and the upper level one comes over it, now it's basically underneath it. So the entire column becomes cool and wet. And when that happens, the surface low fills, the pressure begins to rise, and you no longer have the ability for that air to rise. So the word occlusion, basically, it comes from the word oculary, like you can't see the difference between two different air masses. So the air mass at the surface almost becomes one and the same. And that doesn't allow thunderstorms to develop. You need that difference from warm and cool and moist and dry to get updrafts and downdrafts and horizontal movement to foster, basically large amounts of lift. Once that goes away, you just basically have what we have out there right now, which is stratocumulus clouds. So that system falls apart, goes up over Hudson Bay, and the next one is already beginning to develop today over the Great Basin. This map is actually for 6 p.m. tomorrow. So I kind of jumped ahead a little bit to show that this is going to be over us probably by late tomorrow afternoon. So much of tomorrow should be just cloudy, maybe a little bit of sun in the morning. But as you can see, this next system is already beginning to develop. And because it's so dry out across areas of New Mexico and Texas, every time you get westerly flow off that higher plateau of the Great Basin and the Southern Rockies, you get a dry line. So over eastern, or I should say over Kansas and Oklahoma, there's probably going to be another severe weather outbreak tomorrow.
But for us, it's just basically going to be rain. And because the wind is coming in from the northeast, temperatures tomorrow may only be in the mid-50s, but by tomorrow evening, they'll be back into the mid-40s.
Yikes.
And that's the pattern for the entire week. Anybody who lives within 5 miles of Lake Michigan, you'll be lucky to see 50 degrees all week. This is Tuesday. Wind coming in right from the north and east. A terrible day. Basically cloudy and rainy. Very wet conditions around here. Much different, remember, from last year. Last year we had a drought. Everything is green right now.
Yeah.
So this is not a very significant area of low pressure. It's only about 1,008 millibars. The one that came through Kansas on Friday or Thursday was like 994. So this is not a very strong system. This thing moves to the south and east. And on Wednesday, the high pressure system over Canada gets pulled south. And as that does so, northerly winds come all the way down from Hudson Bay, from James Bay, all the way across Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, and we stay basically in the mid-40s on Wednesday.
Sorry, let me catch up. I was looking at, I want to get the drought map up here before we finish as well. So here's Wednesday. Yep.
And even though I say mostly sunny, it's probably going to be a lot of low clouds coming in off the lake. This is not good. This is cool weather. Although, you know what? There's a lot of tulips coming up right now. And the tulips
keeps the flowers blooming.
Yeah.
Keeps them blooming long.
Yep, I agree. So as much as we may not like this weather, this is really great weather for flowers. This has been a perfect type of light to moderate rain, nothing super heavy, nothing like what we had back in 2019. We had that massive flooding in June. But again, this is off and on light rain. We've got about 5 to 6 inches of rain so far since the 1st of April, but it's come over many periods. A little bit here, a little bit there, nothing real heavy. And again, the tulips are going to love this weather. You get a couple of sunny days, and if you can get up to the Botanic Gardens or out Morton Arboretum, I'm sure everything is going to be looking great. But unfortunately, on Thursday, that next system out across the Rockies begins to move in, and that means we get back into wet weather, probably not until late Thursday. But again, notice with that high to the north and the low to the south and west, that northeast wind just keeps us basically cold. And again, normal high is now up to 67 for May 1st, for at least the first week of May. So if you have temperatures only in the mid-40s, you're now 20 degrees below normal. 20 degrees. That's awful. That's like getting low 60s in July.
And the soil temperatures aren't warming up, in part, I would imagine.
No, they're not warming up because it's so wet and it's been so cloudy. So this is great for anybody who's planted any sort of shrub that needs more. I mean, put it this way: you don't have to water your lawn. All right, you don't have to water your lawn. You're probably not going to be bothered washing your car because every other day it's going to get ruined. But yeah, this is, and again, notice with the low occluding, see that little purple line there? That purple line means that the low is weakening. And again, this means cloudy northeast wind, mid-40s. And I know that the Weather Service has like 55.
Yeah, that I was going to ask you about that. They're all saying like 50s and 60s.
70 next weekend.
No. They put on there cooler near the lake, but this is not cooler near the lake. This is cooler. This is cooler in northeast Illinois. This cooler weather goes all the way to Joliet. This is not near the lake. So this is, it should say colder near the lake, cooler inland. That's what it should say.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is the 7-day rainfall minus what happened, or I should say, not including what happened yesterday. So between now and next Saturday, an additional 1.5 to 2 inches of rain. So this is wet. And getting wetter, and as Peg had alluded to, soil temperature probably remaining cool only because there's no evaporation and very little in the way of sun. I think we're going to end up having the 3rd cloudiest April on record. So if you look at the 30-day precipitation here, areas across southeast Wisconsin, 5 to 6 inches of rain. I'm sure if you take a look at the Des Plaines River today, it's probably way high. But this is great news because now we're officially out of the drought in southern Wisconsin and northern Illinois. So we're back to just D0, but This is through April 26th. If you include the rain that we had yesterday, we're near normal now. So we've gotten what we wanted, which was above normal rainfall, and this is great news for folks who are really getting, concerned about the public. The public areas were looking kind of brown in some areas, the public grassways and things like that. But yeah, it's been wet, and this is what you're going to get some people who hate it, but again, the flowers and the plants are loving it right now.
Well, look at this. Here's the comparison slider. Here's, and I finally got it to work, Peggy, or at least I got it to the right dates. If we go back to June of last year, this is what we're dealing with.
Yeah, and what's great about this site is you can go back and forth, and it really gives you an idea of what had happened. We completely eradicated. Some of those areas were down about 8 inches, and even though we didn't get a lot of snow this past winter, we've gotten some decent rain since the 1st of March. So
look at Iowa, Iowa and Minnesota particularly. Man, as things have changed there. Except for we had the red spot right here in Lake County and then into Wisconsin. But if you look at Minnesota and Iowa, wow, what a difference!
Yeah, wiped out. I know. And I mean, you heard me. I hate to toot my own horn, but you heard me about 2 months ago. I said I'm not really concerned about the drought, because the type of pattern that we're in is one where you're going to get a lot of energy released into the atmosphere since the polar vortex split back in early March. So when that polar vortex split, it literally took the jet stream, I'll do it this way, around the poles and went like that. And as it did so, it allowed the jet stream to kind of become somewhat bogged down. There's what we call a lot of high altitude or high latitude blocking going on. And when you get those blocking patterns, you get these systems come through that pull a lot of Gulf of Mexico moisture north. You get some very steady rains that come out of it. Sometimes, obviously, you get severe weather as well, which is always going to be a byproduct of that. But most of the time, you replenish the wetness that you didn't have during the wintertime. Now, the problem now is we got to get this into areas of the desert Southwest and California, and that ain't going to happen. So the winter wheat crop in Texas is basically done. I was talking to a good friend of mine, John Davis, who's an agricultural meteorologist as well as transportation logistics, and he said unless they get some appreciable rain in the next week, it's over for the winter wheat crop. Now you got to worry about wildfires, and there's been another series of wildfires that took place just 2 days ago in New Mexico. And it's not good there, because that area of dryness is going to continue for that part of the United States. So again, cooler than normal for us. There are some signs that we are going to break out of this in about 2 weeks, but
Let's
I
hope
don't know.
When do we get to lose the fleece and the winter stuff? This is crazy.
Get rid of this.
Come on, I wanted to show it again.
I know it doesn't look good, Mike and Peg. For the next 2 weeks, we just look cool. And Lake Michigan, again, right now is only 43 degrees. That's about 4 degrees below normal. And Lake Superior is still about 32 or 33. So if anybody wants to plan a weekend getaway up to Door County, I would say hold off until about maybe the middle of July. Because otherwise,
or if you don't want crowds, go now. If you don't want crowds, go now.
That's true. But who wants to sit around doing this, holding on to a cup of coffee in early June in Sister Bay, right?
I remember a few years ago where it stayed in the 50s by the lake. And there was mildew problems and all sorts of things because it never warmed up until midsummer.
Yep, I agree. But yeah, for people who want to get up to Door County or Washington Island, forget about the month of May and forget about early June. It's just too cold. It's just too cold.
All right.
Welcome to Vancouver, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Seattle.
really. It does have a little bit of that going for it this year in Chicago. And we're going to get cheated out of a spring. You know what's going to happen? On June 1st, it's going to shoot up to 97, and then it'll be that way through October. And we will not get any spring at all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is spring. It's not the spring that we want, but it's
but hey, stuff is still growing. It's still blooming. One of the advantages of the cool weather is your daffodils and your tulips and your spring blooms last so much longer. I've seen springs where you get an 87-degree day and they're gone in one day.
Yeah,
right.
And they'll last a week like this.
Yeah, where the tulips literally they come up and then 2 days later they're gone. But
right.
The tulips, right, we're doing really well. So enjoy what Mother Nature is giving us, right?
All right, and listen, Rick, you enjoy your May. Have a wonderful time off. We'll see you at the beginning of June, and by then,
I'm down visiting my parents down in Florida for a couple of weeks, and then Memorial Day. So I'll see you guys again.
Send us some map.
Yep, I'll still send you stuff. Don't worry.
All right. We'll I tell you what, if you send me some stuff, I'll pop some of the stuff up on and say, hey, here's what Rick said. I can't explain it, but here's what he said.
Yep. Okay.
All right.
Take care.
All right. You too. All right. Boy, you guys got a little bit of extra DiMaio today. So I hope you all
That's to
enjoyed
last for the next month. So
yeah, a lot of folks are saying, yeah, we love Rick. So we love Rick. We love Rick. So I'm going to dip into that stable of meteorologists I have sitting in the back room. In fact, they're coming in for auditions tomorrow so that I can see who's going to do the forecast next week. All right, let's get out of here. I want to thank all the wonderful people on the show today, starting with the folks at the Illinois Food Scrap whatever. I knew I was going to do that. I don't have it in front of me. Illinois Food Scrap Coalition, Amy Bartucci and Kate Caldwell, who set up having Merleanne Rampale and Vytas Pabedinskas. I didn't get that right either. James Kim. I'm just going home.
Dr. John Bates.
I'm going back to bed. John Bates, Rick DiMaio, meteorologist, Kathleen, Legata and Basil. And until next time, go green or...
Go home.
Whatever.
I don't know. I slept through the whole thing. Well, you didn't miss much.